First contact folly. Admiral Vaxis stood at his command post aboard the Meridian flagship Eternal Dawn, his iridescent scales shimmering under the bridge's crystalline lighting. The massive view screen before him displayed Earth's orbital defense fleet, if one could even call it that. His secondary heart pulsed with amusement as he studied the peculiar vessels. Tactical analysis, he commanded, his voice resonating through the bridge's acoustic chambers. First Officer Naira's tentacles danced across her console, her compound eyes reflecting the streaming data. My lord, we're detecting approximately 50 human vessels. Their largest ship measures only 300 meters in length. Energy signatures are unusual. They appear to be using some form of quantum drive we don't recognize, but output levels are minimal compared to our stellar core engines. Vaxis clicked his mandibles in derision. Show me their weapon systems. That's strange. Naira hesitated. We're not detecting any conventional weapon signatures. No plasma arrays, no mass drivers, not even basic laser batteries. They appear to have some sort of crystalline structures along their hulls, but they're not generating any meaningful energy output. The bridge crew exchanged glances. The Meridian Empire had conquered 12 star systems, each with their own unique approach to warfare. But this was almost insulting. Open a channel, Vaxis ordered. Let's see if their technological inadequacy extends to their communication systems as well. The view screen shifted, revealing a human female in a sleek black uniform. Her dark skin contrasted sharply with striking silver hair, and her expression remained perfectly neutral as she regarded the alien commander. I am Fleet Commander Diana Chen of the Earth Defense Force, she announced, her voice clear and confident. We've been expecting you, Admiral Vaxis. Vaxis felt his scales ripple in surprise. They knew his name. No matter. Commander Chen, I must admit to some disappointment. When our long-range scouts detected your civilization's quantum signature, we expected to find worthy adversaries. Instead, I see before me vessels that would barely qualify as scout ships in our fleet. Chen's lips curved into a slight smile. You find our ships lacking, Admiral. Lacking. They're practically defenseless. No visible weapons, minimal power signatures, and hulls that our weakest weapons could shred like tissue. Tell me, Commander, do you actually intend to defend your world with these toys? Would you be interested in a demonstration of our capabilities? Chen asked, her tone unchanged. Vaxis spread his arms wide, a traditional Meridian gesture of mockery. By all means, Commander, show us what these diminutive vessels can do. Perhaps they possess some hidden virtue that our sensors cannot detect. Very well. Chen nodded to someone off-screen. Remember, Admiral, you asked for this. The human ships began to move. Vaxis watched, expecting to see primitive evasive maneuvers or perhaps some attempt at a formation. Instead, the vessels seemed to flicker. His tactical display struggled to maintain locks as the human ships appeared to exist in multiple positions simultaneously. What trickery is this? He demanded. Naira, explanation. Sir, they're phase shifting. Naira's tentacles writhed in agitation. Somehow they're quantum tunneling their entire ships through probabilistic space. Each vessel exists in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Before Vaxis could process this information, 3 human ships approached his fleet. They weren't flying so much as dancing through reality itself, leaving ghostly afterimages as they shifted between dimensional states. His gunners couldn't target them. How do you aim at something that exists in 5 different positions at once? Fascinating technology, isn't it? Chen's voice carried a hint of pride. We call it quantum superposition drive. Rather than building massive ships with overwhelming power, we learn to exploit the fundamental nature of reality itself. The human vessels suddenly snapped into singular existence, directly adjacent to 3 of his heaviest cruisers. Before Vaxis could shout a warning, the crystalline structures on their hulls pulsed with brilliant light. There was no beam, no projectile, no explosive force. Instead, massive sections of his cruisers simply ceased to exist, leaving perfect spherical voids in their hulls. "What? What did you do?" Vaxis whispered, his pride evaporating like morning dew. "We selectively shifted small portions of your ships into alternate dimensions," Chen explained. "Don't worry. We chose sections containing only non-essential systems. This was just a demonstration, after all." Before Vaxis could process this information, his tactical officer shouted in alarm. "Sir, the rifts, they're appearing inside our shields." "Of course they are," Chen explained, almost sympathetically. "Your shield systems are designed to prevent objects and energy from passing through normal space. But our rifts don't travel through space at all. They simply connect 2 points in the quantum field directly." The demonstration that followed would haunt Vaxis's nightmares for years to come. Thousands of microscopic dimensional rifts appeared throughout his fleet, each one precisely targeted. Shield generators shut down as their internal circuitry was exposed to alternate dimensions. Weapon systems went dark as key components were shifted slightly out of phase with reality. "Don't worry," Chen assured him. "We're being quite precise. No crew members will be harmed. We're simply adjusting the quantum state of specific technological systems." Vaxis watched helplessly as his mighty fleet was systematically disabled by an enemy that hadn't fired a single conventional shot. The humans hadn't needed to breach their shields or overwhelm their defenses. They'd simply bypassed the entire concept of conventional warfare. "How?" he demanded. "How did your species develop this level of quantum manipulation?" "Necessity," Chen replied, her voice now carrying echoes of multiple conversations across probability streams. "When we first reached for the stars, we realized our conventional understanding of physics wasn't sufficient. We couldn't build ships massive enough to brute force our way through spacetime's limitations, so we looked for alternatives." The tactical display showed more human ships emerging from quantum superposition, each one adding its processing power to their shared consciousness. The geometric patterns in space grew more complex, and Vaxis realized they were looking at a physical representation of quantum probability calculations. "Your entire approach to space travel, to warfare, to everything," he said slowly, "it's all based on finesse rather than force." "Exactly." Multiple versions of Chen spoke simultaneously, their voices harmonizing across quantum states. "Why build a battering ram when you can simply convince the door it's already open? Why waste energy fighting against natural laws when you can learn to work within their fundamental nature?" A new alert caught his attention. The quantum field was beginning to affect the very structure of spacetime around his fleet. His ships weren't just disabled. They were becoming entangled with the quantum network itself. "What's happening now?" he asked, trying to keep the fear from his voice. "We're offering you a choice," Chen explained. "Right now, your fleet exists in a superposition of states. In some probability streams, this encounter ends in violence. In others, it leads to a revolutionary exchange of knowledge between our civilizations. We're simply making the peaceful outcome more probable." Vaxis stared at his displays, watching as probability itself seemed to flow and shift around his ships. The humans hadn't just mastered quantum mechanics. They'd learned to use it to manipulate the very fabric of possibility. "And if we choose not to cooperate?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Then we collapse the quantum waveform to a less favorable state," Chen replied calmly. "Your fleet would find itself scattered across multiple dimensions, each ship existing partially in thousands of different realities. The crew would be safe, but reconstructing your vessels would take years, possibly decades." The choice wasn't really a choice at all, and Vaxis knew it. His civilization had built its empire on the assumption that bigger ships, stronger weapons, and more powerful shields were the path to dominance. The humans had simply stepped outside that entire paradigm, turning their initial disadvantage into their greatest strength. "Commander Chen," he said, his voice heavy with resignation, "I believe it's time we discussed the terms of a cultural exchange program." The quantum field rippled with possibility, and for a moment, Vaxis could see glimpses of multiple futures, timelines where this encounter led to unprecedented advancement for both civilizations. The humans hadn't just defeated his fleet, they'd shown him a completely new way of thinking about the universe itself. A wise choice, Admiral. Chen's voice echoed across probability streams. After all, the universe is far more interesting when we explore its mysteries together, rather than fighting over who has the biggest ships. Vaxis understood all too well. His mighty warships would merge at the quantum level, their matter intermixing in ways that would make separation impossible. It would be like trying to unscramble an egg. Your civilization, he said slowly, has taken a completely different path in weapons development. While we focused on increasing power and scale, you learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe itself. Not exactly, Chen corrected. We didn't develop these technologies as weapons initially. We were trying to solve the problem of faster-than-light travel without massive energy expenditure. The military applications were an unfortunate necessity when we realized we weren't alone in the galaxy. A new alert drew Vaxis's attention. The quantum interference field was changing, the patterns shifting into new configurations. Some of his crew began reporting strange sensations, moments of déjà vu, memories of events that hadn't happened yet, glimpses of alternate realities where the battle had gone differently. "What's happening now?" he asked, trying to keep the fear from his voice. "The field is stabilizing," Chen explained. "Once fully formed, it will allow us to selectively alter probability in our favor. Every shot you fire will miss. Every evasive maneuver you make will fail. Not because we're actively stopping you, but because we're making those outcomes mathematically certain." Vaxis had led fleets into battle against enemies who commanded massive dreadnoughts, wielded antimatter weapons, and deployed swarms of autonomous war machines. But this was like trying to fight against mathematics itself. His ships, designed to project overwhelming force, were useless against an enemy that had learned to weaponize uncertainty. "Commander Chen," he said carefully, "I believe it's time we had a serious discussion about revising the Meridian Empire's first contact protocols." Chen's smile returned. "I thought you might say that, Admiral. In fact, according to our quantum probability calculations, there was a 97.3% chance those would be your exact words." The quantum web continued its hypnotic dance around his fleet, a constant reminder that sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't the one that can destroy you. It's the one that makes you question everything you thought you knew about reality itself. Waves of understanding. As the quantum interference field stabilized around his fleet, Admiral Vaxis noticed something that chilled him to his core. The human ships weren't just maintaining their positions, they were starting to pulse in perfect synchronization, like a vast three-dimensional orchestra. "Sir," Naira called out, her tentacles trembling, "I'm detecting unusual energy patterns between their vessels. It's as if they're sharing power somehow." Commander Chen's image appeared unprompted on his command screen. "Your science officer is quite observant, Admiral. Would you like to understand what you're seeing?" Before Vaxis could respond, his tactical display exploded with new data. The humans were freely sharing their sensor readings, allowing him to see exactly what their ships were doing. The crystalline structures along their hulls weren't weapons at all. They were quantum entanglement nodes. "Each of our ships," Chen explained, "is connected to every other ship in the fleet through quantum entanglement. Not just communications or sensor data. Actual physical entanglement at the subatomic level. When one ship generates energy, they all generate energy. When one shifts phase, they all can shift." Vaxis watched in fascination as energy flowed between the human vessels like water finding its level. Their smaller ships didn't need massive power plants because they could share energy across the entire fleet instantaneously, drawing from a common pool that defied traditional physics. "Impossible," Krell muttered. "The energy requirements alone." "That's where you're wrong," Chen interrupted. "Quantum entanglement doesn't require energy to maintain once established. We're not transmitting power through space. We're utilizing the fact that our ships are, in a very real sense, all part of the same quantum system. A demonstration followed. A small human vessel at the edge of their formation suddenly flared with energy readings that should have torn it apart. But instead of overloading, the energy instantly distributed itself across the entire fleet, each ship's crystalline nodes pulsing in harmony. Your ships, Naira whispered in realization. They're not individual vessels at all. They're like nodes in a single quantum computer. Precisely. Chen's approval was evident. Now you're beginning to understand. We don't build massive ships because we don't need to. Our entire fleet functions as a single organism, sharing energy, processing power, and even consciousness across quantum-entangled nodes. Vaxis felt his scales ripple with unease. Consciousness. Did you think our ships were controlled by individual crews? Chen asked. Each vessel has a minimal physical crew, yes, but our consciousness exists across the entire network. When you speak to me, you're actually interacting with a quantum-distributed intelligence that spans our entire fleet. The implications hit Vaxis like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just mastered quantum mechanics. They'd used it to transcend the basic limitations of individual consciousness. Their fleet thought and acted as one, with processing power and reaction times that made conventional combat computers look primitive. Watch, Chen said, and the entire human fleet moved. Not in sequence, not in coordination, but as a single entity. Ships phased in and out of reality in perfect harmony, creating interference patterns that rippled through spacetime itself. The quantum web pulsed, and suddenly Vaxis's sensors detected thousands of potential futures simultaneously. We're not just calculating probability, Chen explained. We're actively observing multiple timeline possibilities and choosing the ones that favor us. Your fleet exists in a superposition of states right now. Defeated and victorious, intact and destroyed, surrendered and fighting. We simply collapse the waveform to select the outcome we prefer. Vaxis stared at his tactical display, watching as probability itself seemed to flow like water around the human ships. Their technology hadn't just changed the rules of combat, it had transcended the very concept of traditional warfare. Your weapons, he said slowly, they're not really weapons at all, are they? No, Chen confirmed. They're tools for manipulating reality itself. We don't need to destroy your ships when we can simply shift them into probability states where they've already been defeated. Violence is inefficient compared to quantum manipulation. A new alert caught his attention. The quantum interference field was beginning to affect his crew's consciousness now. Officers reported experiencing memories of battles that hadn't happened, victories that had never been won, defeats that had yet to occur. What you're feeling, Chen said gently, is your mind's trying to process existing in multiple quantum states simultaneously. Don't worry. The effect is temporary. We found most species need time to adjust to thinking in quantum probabilities rather than linear certainties. Vaxis looked at his mighty fleet, suddenly understanding its true insignificance. They had built bigger ships, more powerful weapons, stronger shields, all based on the assumption that warfare was about force meeting force. The humans had simply stepped outside that paradigm entirely, turning the fundamental nature of reality itself into both weapon and defense. Commander Chen, he said, his voice heavy with realization, I believe the Meridian Empire has much to learn from Earth. Of course, Chen replied, and Vaxis could have sworn he heard multiple voices speaking in perfect harmony. That's the most probable outcome, after all. Pride's cost. Admiral Vaxis felt reality shift again, but this time something was different. The quantum interference patterns generated by the human fleet had begun to take on new configurations, forming what looked like vast, geometric fractals in space. Your attention, please, Admiral. Commander Chen's voice resonated across multiple channels simultaneously. We're about to demonstrate why understanding quantum mechanics is more valuable than raw firepower. The crystalline nodes on the human ships began to pulse in complex sequences, each flash sending ripples through the quantum field. Vaxis watched as small tears in spacetime began to form, not the violent, unstable rifts created by conventional drive systems, but precise, controlled apertures in reality itself. Dimensional rifts, Naira reported, her tentacles writhing in agitation. They're creating thousands of them, each only nanometers wide but perfectly stable. Correct, Chen confirmed. We discovered that quantum-entangled systems could be used to create controlled breaches between dimensions. Most species try to tear holes in spacetime with brute force. We learned to pick the lock instead. The new paradigm. One standard month after the encounter that changed everything, Admiral Vaxis stood in Earth's primary quantum research facility, watching as human scientists demonstrated their technology to a team of bewildered Meridian engineers. It's both elegant and disturbing, Naira observed beside him, her tentacles moving in complex patterns that indicated deep thought. Their entire civilization developed along a completely different technological path than any we've encountered. Before them, a human vessel hung in a quantum suspension field, its crystalline nodes pulsing softly as researchers explained its functioning. Unlike the massive engineering bays of Meridian ships, this facility felt more like a physics laboratory, filled with delicate instruments and holographic probability displays. Look at this, Dr. Sarah Chen, Commander Chen's sister and lead quantum physicist, pointed to a display showing the ship's internal structure. We discovered early on that scaling up conventional space technology would lead to diminishing returns. The energy requirements alone would have made interstellar travel nearly impossible. Vaxis watched as the display shifted, showing how the humans had solved this problem. Instead of building massive engines to brute force their way through spacetime, they had developed ships that could partially exist outside normal space, reducing their effective mass to nearly zero. Your entire approach to physics, he mused, it's like you found a completely different rulebook for the universe. Not different, Sarah corrected, smiling. Just more complete. The universe doesn't care about size or power. It cares about elegance and efficiency. We learned to speak its language instead of shouting at it. The demonstration continued as researchers showed how their quantum entanglement network functioned. Each ship in their fleet wasn't just connected. They were fundamentally part of the same quantum system, sharing energy, processing power, and even consciousness across vast distances instantaneously. The real breakthrough, Sarah explained, came when we stopped thinking of ships as individual entities. Once we understood that quantum entanglement could link multiple vessels into a single system, everything changed. Warfare, exploration, even our understanding of consciousness itself. Vaxis remembered how helpless his mighty fleet had felt when faced with this technology. You could have conquered half the galaxy with this capability, he noted. Why didn't you? Commander Chen's image appeared on a nearby screen, her quantum-distributed consciousness allowing her to participate from orbit. Because conquest is inefficient, she explained. Why waste resources fighting when we could share knowledge? Violence is just failure to find a more elegant solution. The implications of the past month's cultural exchange were still sending shockwaves through Meridian society. Their entire understanding of technological progress, bigger, stronger, more powerful, had been turned on its head. The humans hadn't just shown them a new way to build ships. They demonstrated a new way to think about the universe itself. We're already seeing changes in our younger scientists, Naira commented. They're starting to ask different questions. Instead of how do we generate more power, they're asking how do we reduce the need for power in the first place. Sarah nodded approvingly. That's the real transformation. Technology is just a tool. The important part is learning to think differently about problems. A soft chime interrupted them as a new experiment began. In the center of the facility, researchers were demonstrating their latest breakthrough, a way to use quantum fields to create stable microscopic wormholes. Not for warfare this time, but for communication and exploration. The universe isn't a battlefield to be conquered. Commander Chen's quantum-distributed voice resonated through the facility. It's a puzzle to be solved. Every civilization eventually reaches this understanding. We just got there by a different path than most. Vaxis watched as human and Meridian scientists worked together, sharing ideas and perspectives. His people's expertise in large-scale engineering combined with human understanding of quantum mechanics was already leading to innovations neither species could have achieved alone. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "when I first saw your fleet, I thought you were primitive, weak. I couldn't have been more wrong. You weren't behind us technologically. You were so far ahead that your technology looked like magic to us." Sarah laughed. "Any sufficiently advanced technology looks like magic until you understand the principles behind it. The real question is, are you ready to learn some magic of your own?" As if in response, the quantum field throughout the facility pulsed gently, reality itself seeming to hum with possibility. Humanity hadn't just changed the Meridian Empire's understanding of warfare, they transformed their entire perspective on what was possible. "The future is quantum," Commander Chen's voice echoed across probability streams, "and it's big enough for all of us to explore together." Vaxis looked at his datapad, where reports showed hundreds of joint research projects already underway between human and Meridian scientists. His people had sought to dominate the galaxy through force. Instead, they'd found something far more valuable, a new way of understanding reality itself. "To think," he mused, "all of this started because I called your ships weak and pitiful." "Sometimes," Sarah replied with a knowing smile, "the greatest discoveries come from being completely wrong about something. The real strength lies in being willing to learn from those mistakes." Around them, the quantum fields continued their elegant dance, a constant reminder that in the vast expanse of space, there was always another way, a more elegant solution waiting to be discovered by those willing to think differently about the nature of reality itself.